हां साऊंड चेक करा. आत्ता फक्त साऊंड येतो आहे का दॅट यू सी. हो घ्या ना सुरू केलं आहे. व्हॉट्सॲपवर डायरेक्ट चॅनल ओपन करा. इकडे 2 लोक जॉईन झाले.
साऊंड चालू केलं का त्याचं? आता म्यूट नाही करू शकत. आता म्यूट नाही करू
आवाज येतोय का माझा?
टेक्स्टची क्लॅरिटी येते.
आता परत एकदा चेक करतो.
स्पीकरचा आवाज बराच मोठा आहे ना. तो मोठाच आहे. साऊंडचा आवाज बराच मोठा आहे. मोठा आहे.
हां तेच ना. नाही येत असलं काय नाही.
त्या टायरच्या तिथे उभं राहा. व्ह्यू ऑब्स्ट्रक्ट वगैरे असेल तर ठीक आहे.
फुल व्ह्यू.
आणि झूम होत आहे स्लाईड हो ते तू करशील. सुरुवातीचे शॉर्ट्स घ्यावे लागतात
कॅमेरा
तू करणार आहे समजा. हां म्हणजे विथ द टायटल स्लाईड असं तू घेतलं बरं. बसलेलेच आहे ते डोळे करून रागवत रुपेश एकदा रागवत धाव करतो. आता हे बघणार आहे मी स्टेजवर असतो इकडे बघ इकडे मी तुला सांगतो त्याचे टेस्ट आलेत ना खूप इंटरेस्ट आणि जर त्यांच्यामध्ये बघ जर काही सगळे लोक तिथे बसून एका जागेवर बस. कॅमेरा करू शकतो.
Often, a lot of special lectures from special people across India and the globe. So today's, you've heard of this particularly special lecture with an ISRO scientist that we have organized today. The picture is here. So while we are waiting for it to start in a minute or two, I will request you all to please make your mobiles into silent mode, please. Thank you. So that we don't get in the middle. Please come in the middle. Okay. We often have these lectures, and so if you want to know about them, be informed about various activities of IUCAA, or want to bring your children, or want to know how to get admitted to IUCAA, or some such curiosities you may have, please scan our QR code, and you get all our outreach links and other details there. So this is our lecture today. And we're doing it on a special occasion. Just about a year ago, on 20th November, we had a special day on which one of the instruments on board Aditya L1 was switched on. It's called the Solar Ultraviolet Imaging Telescope. So today, we just want to share this. I mean, it's such a beautiful occasion, so we just wanted to share that we celebrated it today. You've all been here before and heard about Aditya, so we actually cut this cake. Where we celebrated next to IUCAA. And I'm sure it's been very thrilling for the whole team of Aditya and as well as for the SU team, which is a lot of it is based in IUCAA. And so it's a picture with the special scientists that we have today. Okay. So with that still warm introduction, let us go to the main event. So for that, may I request Professor Ram Prakash from IUCAA to come on stage to introduce the speaker today.
Thank you, Samir. It's always a pleasure to be here because when you stand here and look at the audience, you see a lot of young faces all the time, which is amazing. It's a big auditorium, so we hope those who are at the back are still receiving the signal loud and clear, because we're talking about payloads which go very far away from Earth and receive signals from very far away and send them back to Earth for us to understand those interesting phenomena that is happening out there in the universe. But today we have a very illustrious speaker, Ms. Nigar Shaji. She is the Associate Director of the URSC Satellite Center at Bangalore. I came across her for the first time almost a decade ago when we started together working on the Solar Ultraviolet Imaging Telescope as part of the Aditya L1 mission, ISRO's mission to study the sun. I'm sure almost everyone in this audience would have heard of Aditya mission. Nigar Shaji was the project director of that mission, and she still is the project director of the Aditya L1 mission, which some of you know was very successfully launched and sent to a distance of 1.5 million kilometers from Earth towards the sun, to a location called Lagrangian point L1, and where it is now orbiting L1 and studying the sun. Nigar Shaji, since then, has moved on in the ISRO system. She became the program director in charge of all low Earth orbit missions of ISRO and planetary science missions. And then more recently, she has moved up the ladder again, and she is now the associate director, which means she is in charge of almost all ISRO space missions in terms of steering the missions to its conclusion, not any individual ones. And so it's been a brief time knowing her over the last 10 years. But I already see her moving up the ladder within the ISRO system to be in charge of almost all ISRO activities, in satellite activities. She's also in charge of some of the upcoming missions, like the vigorous mission to study our nearest planet, Venus. And there's also an ISRO proposal to look at worlds outside Earth, which could be habitable for life, called exoworlds. These two missions are in very early phase. She's also looking after these missions and nurturing them into full projects and making sure they will be as successful as many of the show missions have been over the past few years. So it's been really wonderful to have her here and tell us about what all ISRO has been doing, what ISRO will be doing in a wide range of domains. And of course, at the end of the talk, you will have an opportunity to ask questions to her. I'm sure she will be very glad to answer those questions and enlighten all of us of all these matters. So without delaying any further, let me invite Mr. Nigar Shaji to come on stage and start off with the presentation.
I will dwell on the past and present what ISRO is doing, because the experience of the past and the present shapes the future. And for ISRO, 2023 was a very successful year with Chandrayaan 3 is the first in the world to land on the south pole of the moon, and followed by the launch of Aditya L1. It was a grand successful year. Following that, we are also known to the public more, and our responsibility on our shoulders have also increased because of that. And today, ISRO is at the helm of its affairs and bustling with a lot of projects and its associated research and development. So it's a good time, and if the youngsters are there, it's a right time for you to join ISRO and contribute and enjoy yourself with the new challenges and the research what's going to take place in a decade to come. At least we have a full plan and the details worked out till 2040, the 100th year of our independence, 2047. So we have a plan laid up, very clear roadmap is laid down. So it's a fantastic time for ISRO, going to be till 2047 and beyond. So, okay. So let me start with, normally these are all the reasons what I could, it's generally known why we go for space exploration. The first and foremost is the human quest for knowledge and our inquisitive nature to know who are we, how do we come, what is our origin, and how we came, where from we have come from, and where we are going, like that. That questions at any point of time, some point of time in everyone's life you would have come across, and that is the basic what every invention in the world and every findings will lead to. Finally, that's the question we are trying to answer for all our findings finally lead to the same road. And next is the national interest. So it's like societal application, but originally space exploration started with for the security and the war, but later it developed there. But if you take India, we started our space program for especially with the goal to use the space technology to uplift the standard of living of the common man. That was the goal with which the ISRO was started by the visionary Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. And at that point of time, if you see, just after independence in the 1960s, the country was fighting against to lift the poverty and all those things, and many eyebrows were raised. Such a condition, is space programs a requirement for the country to invest so much money on that? But the visionary could convince the government and make the program successful. So at that point of time when it was started, it was a luxury. Today it's not a luxury, it is the essential part of your life. And without now space asserts or satellites, you will not be able to, you cannot be, not even for a second, you cannot be without your mobile. And the mobile, the navigation is the most important thing, and without spacecraft and the communication is a very important thing. Without that, you cannot spend any point. Your life is now indispensable with all these space programs and the space assets. So today, and because the program was started, though it was a luxury, that time it was started we are all in par with the world growth, and that's thanks to, we all have to thank the visionaries who started and who had a vision for this. And next, this economic development job, and it will follow when we start the program. And the next important point is the search for life elsewhere in the universe. So always we try to find out, is there anybody else? It may be there, because in that so many number of millions, billions of galaxies and the sun systems, it may be there, nobody knows, but we are still in the quest for searching the life. And the next two important aspect is our present idea, starting from Elon Musk, everybody wanted to colonize the other planets and to make, because already we have enough exploited the Earth resources and we exploited our planet. So it's high time we have to search another place for us to go to make sure that our human species from extermination. And also The resources depletion also is with our industrial revolution and things and our standard of life improvement, that we are depleting the resources also. So to search for any resources like the moon, if you see, it's very rich in helium, and also whether the resources in the moon can be utilized to build further space rockets or something to explore further. So these are all the thoughts, and presently the whole world is moving towards the colonizing or search for resources to substantiate our effort. These are all the two major goals with which the whole world is moving towards the space programs, apart from the societal applications which became part and parcel of our life. Okay, coming to ISRO, we started our program in satellite program especially. 1972, we started that we will build a spacecraft on our own. That was the Aryabhatta. So that was very challenging those days in 1972, when none of the team members, they don't even know how a spacecraft looks like, what are all the systems. So it's really, what we are doing today is, I don't feel it's something great. Those days when there was not even, they don't even know how it operates and what are all the subsystem it has. And that too, in a span of 3 years, they could build an Aryabhatta spacecraft, which has also a first spacecraft has the science payload. It is X-ray astronomy payload. And we used to hear the stories by our founding father, Dr. Professor URSC. So it seems when he started this program, that importing the components was it was a quite challenging task. He used to go, because he worked earlier in the NASA, I feel, and he has good acquaintance with Russians and Americans. So he used to go with a bag to NASA and Russian space agencies, and he used to call his friends, and whatever the extra components you have, you put in this basket. So I will take it. So that was the type of the struggle what they have undergone to build the first spacecraft. And then he used to bring, and but it was really, even now, I don't feel within 3 years we can conceive a big spacecraft and make it happen. It's really quite challenging, and those periods we have done it. So with that, we started first initially on the 2 application sites, that is on the communication as well as the Earth observation. So simultaneously these 2 programs have started, and today we are we can say that we are self-sufficient in the fields of Earth observation as well as the communication. So Earth observation, we have a lot of applications, and most of the ministries use our data for agriculture or infrastructure mapping, forest mapping, the water resources, and moreover now seeing the climate change, whatever the present climate change, what is happening. So there also the satellite images provide a major, it plays a major role, because that ocean wind, ocean temperature and ocean level, that plays a major role in assessing the climate change. So those things, and the emission of carbon dioxide and all those we have, because after the G20 we had a spacecraft specially designed for the climate observations. So with the collaboration with the foreign payloads as well as our Indian payloads, so that will be in orbit in another 2-3 years. So in the communication side, we had built a lot of transponders, and many of our transponders are being used for, if you take any banking, stock market, and regular communication, broadcasting, all those things are the transponders are being used. And those days, tele-education played a major role that time, when we don't have even the connectivity in the remote villages and the areas of the country, because those days, you may not remember, we have to wait for 3 to 5 years to get one telephone connection those days. So at that point of time, the tele-education through the satellite played, it was very a successful program. Even the remote corners of the northeast and the we could reach them through the satellite, and tele-education and telemedicine was. But today that's not a problem. You have every access, and that too satellite also, all through the normal link and ground link also, and broadcasting, and also we have built a lot of weather applications also. We have a fleet of now 3 spacecrafts purely for the Indian Meteorological Department for the weather observation. It has humidity sounding as well as the weather mapping. So that 3 satellites will all your weather forecasts are based on those satellites. So we started with the Earth observation and communication. Slowly, once we had attained self-sufficiency in those things, we moved on to navigation. So we have been global navigation system. We have been depending on GPS, GLONASS, and all those countries' navigation systems. So it is just for our strategic use. The high resolution navigation data is not openly available in the public. So we need to have our own regional navigation system. So we moved on to navigation system where we have our own regional navigation system, and we are going to the 2nd generation navigation system also for that navigation. Soon we are also trying to make a receiver part of our mobiles so that like GPS we can get our Navi. It's called in our regional Indian navigation system is called Navi, and that receiver also we are slowly trying to build in our own receiver, all mobiles. And then having achieved all this, the goal of the space program was almost achieved, and shifted our attention to space science and as well as the human space flight programs. So space science, where we have astronomy, planetary, outer space studies, we have a lot of missions, and future, because now post COVID, if you see, the government has taken a decision to have the more private players, and they call it space reforms, and they wanted all these application specific spacecrafts to be built by the private industry and the academic institutions, so that the ISRO will be more focused on the research on the space science missions and the new technology developments and the new challenges. So that's the present situation. Because we are having hand-holding with the private industries for enabling them to build all these spacecraft, so that our concentration will be on the research and development. That is the present scenario of ISRO. Yeah. So coming to, because to have the satellites in space, but take the satellites to space, we need the rockets. And that launch vehicles, we started our development with the SLV, which is of the order, which can lift. Actually, if you see, the satellite will be the payload for this launch vehicles. And the efficiency of these systems, if you see, you have a 17-ton rocket which can lift only 40 kg of the. So this efficiency, and I would say that we are not very efficient. Compared to world standards, we are not very efficient. Okay, so we are moderately efficient. So we are also in the launch vehicle side, we are moving towards making more efficient and building the launch vehicles which can carry more and more bigger spacecraft. You see, now presently what we have is the LVM-3 is our heaviest launch vehicle, which can lift around 4,000 to 4,500 kg, and that also the payload also varies with which orbit you wanted to, because we have many orbits, the LEO orbits, that normally our remote sensing or Earth observation, where we will go for an order of 500 to 1,000 kilometers of the altitude. That orbit we will have the lower, because Earth observation we can have better resolution if you put it in the lower orbit with the same optical systems. So that way, and for communication satellites, that has to be in the 36,000 geosynchronous orbits. For that, the payload weight will come down, because it has to reach to sub-GEO orbit, where again we will use our satellite propulsion systems to push it further. So that way the payload mass what the launch vehicle can carry, that differs based on the orbit at which you wanted to put it. So presently, that's all, because recently you might have seen we had gone for a SpaceX launch, because our communication satellite normally they're all heavier spacecrafts with a lot of transponders. So that we couldn't, our launch vehicle doesn't have the capability to lift it, so we had to go for a higher launch. So, and here also we have a lot of new developments. We are going for, presently we have a cryo engine which is the part of the LVM3 which is weighing 640 tons and 4000 kg, 4 to 4000. This is LVM3 is the vehicle with which Chandrayaan-3 was launched, and many of our communication satellites will be launched. And now the future in this direction, what we are going towards is the next go for a semi-cryo. See, cryo, it's only the fuel varies. If you take a cryo engine, there is a liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen will be the fuels for it. And the semi-cryo, we go for a kerosene fuel that has, it's much more efficient, and the thrust what you can develop is much higher. So that semi-cryo, and slowly by 2040 we are planning to have a vehicle which can lift up to 22 tons. That's the plan. So we have to move in this direction, otherwise all our interplanetary missions, which is going to be weighing very heavy. So that needs a launch vehicle of our own to have the mission successful. And this LVM3 only is going to be used for our Gaganyaan program. In the Gaganyaan, that the human spaceflight, it will be around the 500 kilometer orbit. So our LVM3 for the 400 kilometer orbit, it can lift up to 10 ton. So that is the 10 ton is the mass of our Gaganyaan, the human spaceflight. We wanted to have a suborbital flight of a 3-4 days stay and come back. And leading to, we want to build a future like ISS, we want to have our own Bharatiya Antariksh station. So it's same as ISS. So this is the developments and the challenges going on in the launch vehicle side. Just I wanted to say how we operate. We have 5 verticals. We have different, all over India, we have different centers which deals with a particular aspect of the entire space program. So if you take the first, space applications. So like Earth remote sensing as well as communication or navigation, that for remote sensing, we have 2 varieties, whether we can have optical remote sensing or microwave remote sensing. So that type of payload, the different payloads for ocean studies, different payloads. So that way the payloads need to be realistic, because the entire, that payload, further we build a platform and that becomes a spacecraft, and the spacecraft will become the payload for the launch vehicle. So that's how it goes. So we have a space application center at Ahmedabad that takes care of all the necessary payloads required. But in case of science payloads, we look for all our science institutes, as well as we have our own some science centers also. They will make the payload. And then comes the space infrastructure, that is the center where I am. So that takes care of the building the entire, taking the payload and building the entire spacecraft. That we have that center. And then the space transportation, for transporting the spacecrafts to the space. So that is Vikram Sarabhai Space Center and its Liquid Propulsion Center, allied centers, it is in Trivandrum. So that center takes care of the launch vehicle side. And with all that, the capacity building, that is the launch base, and the other things which is required for all these developments will be, there is a separate column of capacity building. So that will be taken care by Sriharikota base. And apart from this, we have a separate wing for the human space program. Because if you see, because the human space program, because all the developments, whatever has been done for the space assets making, will be the same for the human space, but the reliability here, what we have to achieve, it is very, very high, because we deal with humans. It's because we cannot, we should have a reliability of 99%. Then that's why we normally, if you take a Gaganyaan program, we have 2 flights, dummy flights without human being, the same as the same configuration, we will have 2 flights. Then both after 2 consecutive successful flights only, the 3rd flight will be with the humans. So coming to Earth observation, we have now we have a thematic application spacecrafts. We have 3 thematic applications, and we also, as well, because spacecraft, if you take, it will have a life of depends on the your fuel availability and the system's reliability. You will fix up a life for each spacecraft. Normally, for the low Earth observation spacecraft, we will fix a life of 5 to 7 years, and for communication satellite, it is 15 years. So, and we have these 3 thematic things we have, and here also we will replenish also once by the time the life of the earlier spacecraft is, because we have to provide a continuity of services. We cannot abruptly stop the data. So we have to have a continuity of services. So under these 3 things, land and water resource management, we have a lot of 2-3 spacecraft resource, and we call it. So they are continuously providing data for managing land and water resource management. And coming to then for the cartography and large scale mapping, that is for infrastructure development and making and mapping, and for all those things we have a series of carto. And the environmental as well as ocean and atmospheric monitoring, all these things in another thematic. We have ocean studies, whether we have 2 spacecrafts, and we have for atmospheric studies. So that's a cluster that takes care of the climate change as well as the ocean studies. This is what we have past and present communication. To come to communication satellites, originally the technology was, we call it bent pipe technology. That is, you send a signal, it will be only frequency converted and sent back to the other ground station in the on Earth. So it is called, we call it bent pipe. So now, as the technology progresses and our requirements also has becoming higher, so we have lot of, we call it regenerative, that means we will regenerate the signal, that improve the signal to noise ratio of the signal and send it, and also a lot of flexibility, like we have the beam steering, so that when you send some communication messages, we wanted to send it, because earlier it is the antennas are fixed, it has to go to some hub, and from there it has to. So now we are trying to have a beam steering and lot of flexibility in the payload, so that we can direct the beam and we can transfer it to wherever they are. So like this in the communication application side, a lot of new developments are in the pipeline, and we were also moving towards the flexible payloads. And so normally these, and also a thought of whether to go for a heavier, there is a heavier single communication satellite, or to have like Starlinks, they'll have a multitude of small satellites on the lower for the internet traffic. So that's also that both concepts are going for a bigger as well as the constellations. And in the Earth observation side also, we are also trying for the formation flying. So that's very useful for if you want like a big telescope to be built. So normally if you see the spacecrafts, now it has a constraint. These launch vehicles will have some envelope that much only they can carry. So you cannot have a big volume. So that there comes our lot of mechanism. We will stow it, and after going to space we will deploy it. So even then very huge mirrors and some things like that, if you want to have, it's not possible. And so that time this formation flying will be of use. We can have a big arrays, antenna arrays, or big optics. We have to adjust the 3 spacecraft, it will form a complete telescope or complete antenna arrays. So such developments are also going on in one side. Okay. Coming to space science and exploration, we started, after completing our goal of societal applications, we moved on to space science. So first our space science program, space science project was Chandrayaan-1. So in if you take interplanetary missions, there will be like 3 types. One is the orbiter, which orbits around the planet or the body, the external body. So there it is all, what you can do is only the remote sensing. You can only sense remotely from the orbit and sense the data. The next step is landing on that. And you can have a rovers, you rove around and the surface mineralogy and such experiments we can do, and that is the next step. And the third is bringing samples from there and do research in here. So these are all the, normally any interplanetary or any planetary body, these are all the three things invariably everyone does. Starts with an orbiter and go with the lander and come back with a sample and then take humans to the planet. So till we have launch vehicle side, that lot of this propulsion side, lot of research has to go on, because if you want human to fly to Mars, at least it takes minimum 6 months, and that also 6 months, and you have the opportunity once in 2 years. Because if you take the shortest distance you wanted to travel, if you take the orbital period of any two planets, it will match, the shortest distance will occur, depends on the orbital period of the two planets. For Mars, if you take once in 2 years, you will get the shortest distance. For Venus, if you take once in 18 months, you will get an opportunity. So a human sitting in a launch vehicle for 6 months and going to Mars, it's still not very viable an option. So lot of developments are going on in the propulsion side to have a nuclear propulsion which can move very fast. See, almost the ultimate is to travel with the speed of light. We should have a system. So then it's all this interplanetary will be a very viable option to go and have our humans there in the other planets. So starting with Chandrayaan-1, which was an orbiter, it was successful in finding out water on the moon with a collaborative payload from NASA. Then we moved on to for Mars orbiter mission. Well, that was a very challenging mission, because at that point of time we had a vehicle capability which can lift only 1400 kg. That PSLV only was the vehicle at that point of we never had the LVM-3 also. So we developed a system which could carry that much fuel and go and get inserted into Mars orbit and have that. But that was very quite challenging task. We could make it within the available mass of 1400, because the fuel itself is around 1000 kg of fuel is required for traveling that much distance. So that was quite challenging. We could achieve it in our first attempt. We could orbit around the Mars. Then we moved on to Chandrayaan-2, which was again from the orbiter we went to the lander. So Chandrayaan-2 originally also we had a collaboration with the Russian lander. Actually, then initially we thought we will have a Russian lander and we will have our rover and we will have the mission. But it's quite I think the Russian backed out after a few years, some 5-6 years of working together. Russians backed out that they cannot provide us the lander. But I feel it's good for us. So at least because of that, we could develop our own lander. Then we started developing our own lander, and Chandrayaan-2, it was a failure, and we learned lessons from the failure. And Chandrayaan-3, we made it a successful one. And followed that, in between we had a totally astronomy spacecraft, Astrosat, and IUCAA's UWIT is still, even now, it provides wonderful. And morning your director was telling 400 papers has been produced in the last 10 years. So it was a very, very successful astronomy mission. And then we had, after Chandrayaan-3, we had L1 and Exposat. Exposat is also a very unique polarimetry. That was a payload which was by RRI has provided that payload. And we had other, and future we have a lot of science missions ahead. Okay, this is just to say that Astrosat, we have, it's a multi-wavelength, this one, multi-wavelength telescope with UWIT from IUCAA and IAA collaboration, and we have like this many payloads, and it was a wonderful experience, and it is very successfully in orbit, even today in orbit, providing a lot of data. Then coming to Chandrayaan-3, just I wanted we had 3 modules. That is we call it the propulsion module, because originally in Chandrayaan-2 it was an orbiter, because we already had an orbiter, and Chandrayaan-2 orbiter we had a very powerful camera with a resolution of order of meters. I don't remember the exact number. That was the highest resolution in the world, that camera. And even for NASA took a lot of the images. They used to ask their landing site images. They used to ask us, and we used to provide the landing site images of from our camera. That was at that point of time, it was the highest resolution available moon imager. And then we have the lander, and we have a very small 25 kg rover. And this life also, it is only for a one moon day. That is roughly 2 weeks, 14 days of Earth days, because we don't have a nuclear propulsion. We have only the solar powered rover. So in moon, if you see, it is 15 days day and 15 day night. We don't have, and night the temperature also will be very, very low, of the order of minus 200 to 50 degree. And many of our systems are not made for this type of withstanding these type of temperatures. So our rover, we have designed it for 15 days, and for 15 days it never woke up after the night. So only we have a nuclear propulsion. We had a small nuclear propulsion which was of 1 watt, just as an experiment. But with that we couldn't make the entire rover get powered. And we had a lot of payloads in the lander, as well as even as well as the rover. For most of the things was for surface mineralogy experiments. So just wanted to tell you how we normally, any interplanetary mission, we will have 3 phases. One is the Earth phase, because of the limitation of the launch vehicle, it will be put in the sub-J orbit. Because other countries, NASA and ISRO, they can straight away put it on the escape orbit. It will be escaping from the Earth. So we will have these these are all the lower Earth burns we call. We will fire our thrust engines, and slowly we will increase the apogee of the orbit, and finally we will come to escaping from the Earth. We will achieve the delta V, which is equivalent to around 11 km per second, to escape from the gravitational pull of the Earth, and then we will have a heliocentric phase. That will be, it will be traveling around the sun. And when it comes closer to the moon, we have to reduce the velocity to get it pulled towards the attraction of the planet, because we will be traveling with a higher velocity. And here we will be getting the insertion done, and then we will slowly reduce the orbit also, because the insertion will happen with the highly elliptical orbit of the order of some 60,000 kilometers and all. So then slowly we will reduce it and come to a closer around the moon, where then we will start our lander descent operation. And then we have to land, and the rover deployment has to happen, and the rover has to work on the. Okay, this is the thing which we follow for any of the interplanetary missions. All the interplanetary, these 3 phases, this is the way, this is the Huffman transfer we call. This is the type of transfer which consumes less energy. So this is our profile of the challenge in any landing. See, when we have to land on the Earth, your velocity has to reach almost 0, because with some crashing some 10 kilometers, 6 kilometers, that your lander legs or your systems cannot withstand that velocity. So the challenge is reducing the velocity within then you have a fixed range. It is a pre-planned path, and you have a fixed range, and this range at that particular velocity you have a fixed time. So you have to match it such a way, reach the range, and within the time you have to reduce the velocity to null by the time you touches the ground. So for this we will have lot of sensors, and which for altitude measurement, velocity measurement, and our also the thruster also has to, the variable thrust engines we will have. So it is a closed loop system. So based on the sensor input and things, we will be adjusting the thrust, so that we have to see, we cannot reduce the velocity much before the time, then it will free fall. And we cannot also, beyond the time also, we at that point of time we have to achieve that, because Chandrayaan 2, the failure happened at the time has, the time has arrived, but the velocity has not reduced to zero. So that's how it crash landed on the surface. So that's the very tricky way of the navigation, guidance and control has to be. And every, the thrust engine as well as the sensors with their precisions and with their accuracies, they all have to function, a lot of parameters have to function well within the range. And to have this as well, that's why that success rate for this landing missions are little very poor. So even a repeat mission, we cannot be fully sure that it will land properly. So next, coming to Aditya. See, Aditya, as Ram told, I've been working with the IUCAA team since 2016. It was a wonderful time working with the team, and it was a mutual learning for both the teams. And because our way of working and their way of working, we could arrive at a common place where we could successful. And now today the instrument is very well working, and we are going to get a lot of, like Astrosat. I hope this also will work for more than 10 years and give a lot of good results. And so here we went for this Lagrangian point, because you might have read already. That is, any two mass bodies, you will have always a point where the gravitational pull almost cancels each other. That's how, like the Sun Earth system also, we have 5 Lagrangian points. In that L1, which is, it has an advantage, it is always, because this L1 point moves along with the Earth, so it never sees the eclipse. And it will be always facing the sun, and always 24/7 it will be observing the sun. That's the advantage. That's why these points are, L1 points are chosen for the sun studies or any other planetary studies also. These points are very advanced. Similarly for Earth to Moon, if you see, the L2 point is very advantage to have a constant communication with the Earth. So if you can have a spacecraft at L2 around the moon, we can have continuous visibility to the ground station. Because now if you take Aditya, we have only 10 hours of visibility to our Indian ground station. So another remaining time it is on the other ground stations, and we have to hire the ground station from the other countries, because for any of our interplanetary missions, we will be hiring ground support from the other countries for the initial launch phase. And also we had support for 1 year from the ISRO. So here also we had the 7 instruments which covering from UV, IR, visible, X-ray and the particle side. It was actually a good suite of instruments for observing the major solar activities of flare, CMEs or the particle solar winds. So this is okay. Anyway, they have got today it is 1 year, and it was launched on September 2nd, and January 6th we could. This also had the same 3 phases of insertion: the lower Earth burns, the heliocentric phase, and the insertion around L1. Here here it is little more tricky around L1, because maintaining around L1 is very because even small variation in the velocity will push the spacecraft either towards sun side or the earth side. So keep maintaining that. It's always, they say, a ball on the hilltop. It is like L1. So it can, if you don't maintain, it can go on either slopes. So that is compared to the other interplanetary missions where we were orbiting around the planets. Here the way the station keeping has to be done is little quite different and quite tricky than the planets, the orbits around the planet. Then we have that Exposat. It is for the ISRO polarization, and this is also started. It was launched in this January, and this calibration phase is over, and they are also getting the data, and it can give the degree of polarization. It's mainly for they are planning to observe the 50 sources. That's what the target. Okay, so presently the immediate future missions what we have is this is a docking experiment, because for any of your Gaganyaan, if they want a space station to be in space, we need to have the space vehicles has to go and dock with it and come back, and the cargo fetching, all those things. Docking is an important aspect which has to be tested. So this for space docking, it is getting ready. Maybe by year end we will have a launch. This here, it is the two identical spacecrafts. It's for an experiment. How, because if you see now the circular orbit, it will be moving. The both spacecraft has to be moving, and you have to know the position of the other spacecraft by this spacecraft. You should have. We have rendezvous sensors which finds the position and the velocity of that, and it has to move in synchronization with the velocity of that, and finally it has to go and dock it and undock. So this is also a very interesting and challenging experiment, and we have two spaces. This experimental studies, and also we are planning to, after docking, because mainly nowadays this docking is very important for the servicing missions are now being, because putting a lot of money and sending a spacecraft, and the life is going to be only limited by 10 years, 15 years, and it's not cost effective. So nowadays there are servicing missions where the fuel is not there or some systems have failed. So these spacecrafts can go, dock it, and they can transfer the fuel from this spacecraft to that, and also the power transfer we can do, or some of the system which has failed can be operated from this spacecraft. So such type of things and all this docking is a must experiment. So we have to have a docking experience. So it is useful for many of our future missions this summer. And also nowadays, if you see the communication spacecraft will stay. The frequency, bandwidth, and the slots, because if you see that it is geosynchronous orbit is very flooded with all this communication from every country is putting a lot of communication. So that orbital slot, there is an international body which regulates this orbital slot allotting to each country as well as the frequency band allotment to the country. So it's all premium, and we are not able to, once we miss the slot, again you apply for the slot, already it will be allotted to some other country. So keeping hold of the orbital slot as well as the frequency is going to be becoming a big challenge. And so people are moving towards higher and higher bands, QV band where the bandwidths are more. And also now everything is moving towards the optical communication. And also for the security and strategic application, the quantum encryption is a necessity. So we have some experiments for optical communication as well as quantum encryption. For that also two spacecrafts experimental payloads. We have the quantum encryption, quantum communication, optical communication, and quantum encryption. That is the immediately, that work is also going on. And coming to human slave, we have a separate wing which works on that, because all these five centers will support their respective, their own expertise. They will be making that subsystem and supplying. Here we will have two things. One is the crew module and the service module. The crew module where the life support systems and things, and they will have a lot of escape abort system, because at any point of the time, if there is a failure, that crew module should be able to come back to Earth. So that is the, and here the meteoroids attacks will be more. So it has to be, this crew module has to be specially built with for that, because at 500 kilometer orbit, that biggest threat is the meteor threat. So these are all the few aspects which differs from the our regular spacecraft. Then the immediate future is the lunar sample vector mission, and here also, because of our launch vehicle limitation, we are planning to have, because it has to be around some 8 ton of the total requirement is around 8 ton. So what we are planning to do is 2 modules in one launch and another 2 modules in another launch, and that launch also has to happen within 15 days, otherwise that the orbital plane will change. So within 15 days we'll have the launch, and have the launch on the suborbital orbit. We will dock it and make it as a single module, and travel towards moon, and the moon we will separate. The landing module alone will separate, and that it will go and land, and have the sample, and it will come back and again dock it back with the recovery module, and the recovery module will come back to Earth. That was the plan what we are planning for the immediate. It will be in 2028. We are planning to have the lunar sample return mission, and next we wanted to have the Mars lander mission also. In the landing mission, there are only two types. One is where you should have a technology where there is no atmosphere, and we should have a different technology for planets where there is a thin atmosphere. So in case of moon, if you take, there is no atmosphere. That totally with the propellant, we can with the firing of the engines and the thrust development, we can land it. Here, because the atmosphere, we wanted to make use of the atmosphere, and we'll have that parachutes, supersonic parachutes, which will be deployed, so that it's normally as the area we wanted to increase, so that reduce the speed. So use the atmosphere, and so it's a different technique for Mars landing. That's these two, with atmosphere, without atmosphere, there are two different techniques of landing. Here also we wanted to have the crane type landing system. So it will be that from this one like a crane, it will lower the rover, and it will place it on the Mars surface. And coming to the future science missions, we have the Venus orbit that's also recently approved, and here we wanted to mainly focus on the Venus atmospheric studies and the surface topography. After Magellan, this is going to be the mapping of a 40 centimeter resolution, we can map it. So we can have a synthetic aperture radar which can map surface and subsurface, and also the Sun-Venus atmosphere interaction. So these are all the major objectives, and here we wanted to employ aerobraking. That means because normally there are a lot of techniques where how to reduce the fuel, because carrying fuel and you have a limitation of what the launch vehicle can carry. So here the aerobraking means Venus use the atmosphere and use the atmosphere to break it so that we can go to a smaller orbit. If we don't use the aerobraking, we have to spend some 1000 kgs of fuel for to do the same. Here what we do is the spacecraft we plunge into atmosphere, so atmosphere reduces the velocity. So when it comes out, the apogee will reduce, the velocity reduces, that orbit will come down. So that's how we do the aerobraking. And one other method, normally it is everywhere at a gravity assist. For long, like Voyager and other Saturn, Jupiter missions, if you see, they will go for use the gravity assist of the other planets, and use that as a delta V increase in the speed. So that we wanted to try in this Venus orbiter mission, and we have some Disha mission for the atmospheric studies, and Trisha, which is a collaborative mission with Cannes, France, and it's all for the climatic and environmental studies. And also we have a very ambitious ExoWorld, which is something like JWST, but that is of 6 meter mirror. We wanted to have it as a 2 meter mirror. It's mainly for the study of the atmosphere of the exoplanets, but transition spectroscopy technique. And here also we wanted to have a segmented mirror. So instead of having a big mirror, in JWST also we had a segmented mirror, so that it can be folded and kept in a volume what is available in the launch vehicle. And we have a collaborative mission, landing mission with JAXA, Japan. So there we are developing a lander which is a heavy duty, not like Chandrayaan-3. It is a heavy duty lander which can carry 300 kg of rover. What we carried of the order of 25 kg. So such a collaborative missions are there. And finally, our plan for till 2047 is to have a human presence on the moon, as well as building a Bharatiya Antariksh station. So we have a series of moon missions, because once we want to have an infrastructure and human presence on the moon, we need to build the navigation and communication support, and we should have a lot of experimental return missions. And throughout the payloads also we have whether we can make use of the materials of the moon to build the infrastructure there. So like a lot of payloads and a lot of experiments are handled, and Bharatiya Antariksh Station, their docking is an important that PAS 1, that is the first segment of the Bharatiya Antariksh Station will be, we are planning 2030-32 time frame we wanted to have it, and further we wanted to. So the grand plan is to have human presence on the moon as well as the Bharatiya Antariksh Station. So we have till 2047, we have a lot of plans. So thank you.
We welcome some questions as well from the audience. So if you please put up your hands, we'll come to you with the microphones. Keep your hands up, we'll come to you on that.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Aditya Pandya, and I'm also into this organizing events regarding astronomy in schools and all.
Can you keep your mic
Yeah, sure.
far away?
I'm also a social media influencer with somewhere around 10,000 plus followers on Instagram. So I had a question that as I registered myself in Space Tutor, how can the Space Tutor program involve awareness about hands-on training that can involve students as well as youngsters to collaborate with ISRO by providing their curriculum and by
Relevant to the talk, it's a very separate question.
no, it was about the future of ISRO. Sure. I also have a question regarding the same. We talked about propulsion that was the lift-off weight and the complete mass of the payload is different. So the technology that is scramjet ISRO technology that is using hydrogen as a fuel and oxygen from atmosphere to lift off. So how well is that technology to integrate with future space travel?
No, actually, what you are talking is the air breathing. If they utilize the oxygen and the atmosphere to have the fuel.
Yes.
That we also have that scramjet and the air breathing exercises, but that is on the till atmosphere only we can utilize that. So beyond atmosphere we have to, so till we cross the atmosphere we can use that. That's also we are trying because we have a separate program with the air breathing and scramjet development also, so that we can use it as a first stage of the vehicle till the or lower experiments like that we can use. So that's also in the development, but for a long travel beyond atmosphere, it's still not viable.
But to integrate both the technologies where we include certain amount of scramjet to lift off till a level where so that we can reduce the fuel consumption.
I'm not very clear.
If we integrate both the technologies that we are using right now, the solid and liquid state propulsion as well as the scramjet propulsion that we are using to get till the atmosphere. So isn't it a good idea to integrate both of them together so that we can get a better amount of payload capacity?
Yeah, that's also we are working on because the main objective is to increase the efficiency of the payload carrying. So what we are moving towards this air breathing scramjet that research is going on parallelly. So when it matures, we will get inducted into the mainstream. And also we are moving towards that semi-cryo, that with the liquid, with the kerosene as the fuel as well as the oxygen, that we have advantage like kerosene can be stored at room level, we need not cool it, and it's the density wise also we can store it, more storage, that's how the efficiency is improved. So that's what we are trying. It's all both directions we are working on it. Especially this scramjet air breathing things will be for the return launch vehicle, it will be very useful. So we are looking into it.
Sure, thank you.
What is mean payload?
Okay, payload means, okay, you want want to, what we call payload, it should be the final application. See, if you see, you take camera. Camera is the payload we call it. Because camera on the spacecraft when you put, it will look how you take a photograph, that will take the photograph of the Earth. So that only, like that, there are so many ways of looking at the Earth and understanding the water resource or what is on the Earth, what is, whether any forest fire, what is the forest mapping, all those things we call it as, okay, you can take it as camera, we call it payload.
And when all the people of Earth will go on the moon?
Maybe you can do it.
Hello, ma'am. So I'm just curious, why are we so interested to go to moon? Like our focus is to go to moon. Upcoming ambitions. Is there something special that will help us to understand about astronomy or universe in a better way?
No, both are required, right? We are doing missions for understanding, say, the space, astronomy, and that missions also we have. Mainly this moon, everybody is concentrating because as I explained, if you want to travel further and further, at one go we cannot carry everything. So that's the distance what we can travel is getting limited by that. So there is a worldwide thinking that moon can be as a base, and you build infrastructure there. We are now we are in that our human on that moon missions also. We wanted to have a 3D printer and use the material there in the moon itself, and now 3D printing rockets are being used. We are also, our stages are also getting 3D printed. So have a 3D printing machine there itself and build your own structures and all those things, so that it will be a base where you can gain some more. That's the idea.
Amazing. Thank you.
Are we doing anything about the space debris that is orbiting the Earth right now, or is it not a thing to worry about yet?
You're talking about space debris?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge threat now because the way everybody is putting their satellites into orbit, and there are now what we have regulations like for frequency and the orbital slot. Now there are regulations for the debris management also, because now internationally the laws are being made. When we have a spacecraft, it's the end of the life, we should make sure we should have sufficient propellant to push it down to the Earth's atmosphere, burn it, and so that at least the orbital slots are there, and there are many techniques are being developed to start catching the spacecraft and debris. Like that, lot of research is going on in that space cleanup program. And these are all the laws which are being made, and now our all present spacecraft should have sufficient margin of the fuel for it to at the end of life to bring it back. We cannot just like that leave it in the orbit. So like that it's coming up because there is a huge threat about because of the debris.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am. What are the initial steps for a sustainable space mission? What initial steps can be taken for a sustainable space mission? Like not creating a lot of waste. What can be the ways?
Not creating debris?
A lot of waste, yeah.
No, that's what, because the material, we cannot avoid debris. In a spacecraft we have a lot of materials like aluminium, everything is there, and the electronics, lot of things are there, optics are there. But it is no way we can avoid, not. The only way is to bring it, burn it, so that at least it will not be a threat to the next spacecraft what is going to be in orbit. But that way, whatever you can ask when we fire it and bring it to atmosphere, and there the debris will increase only, because everything will again burn it, and finally it will fall in. It will at so many years, like in our spacecraft and all will take 25 to 30 years for it on its own if you leave it. 30, 40 years, it depends on the orbital height. It takes for it to come and crash to atmosphere and come back to and it falls on the earth. So as on today, there is no way we can avoid that debris. That maybe in future some developments which can be make the spacecraft more sustainable, like long life, so that we can avoid the amount of debris it creates. That's the only way. You have to increase the life of the space asset so that frequent debris formation can be avoided.
Hello, ma'am. So, you said that fuel is a big problem for satellites and it increases the weight. So, by docking, can we like fighter jets which have the ability to refuel mid-air? So, can we use a separate fuel tank which docks to the satellite and which can refuel the satellite in orbit, like?
Yeah, that's what we are doing. I talked about the service missions, what we are going to have now, because one of the way that debris can be reduced is increasing the life of the systems. So that only we have a service like your petrol stations. We wanted to have a spacecraft which can go dock it and transfer the fuel or any other system which is a failed system which can do it. So that is now the present trend is to have the service missions.
Thank you.
Ma'am, in the Mars orbiter slide, you had included that the Martian elliptical orbit is 372 multiplied by 80,000 kilometers. So what is 372 in that slide?
320.
372 multiplied by 80,000.
It is an elliptical orbit. The closest point what we call is, okay, depends on the planet, we call perihelion, apohelion, perigee, apogee, okay, it's the, if you take any elliptical orbit, there will be an apogee and perigee, that shortest point and the longest point. So this 320 is the perigee, that at some point of time it goes very closer to the planet, that is the 320, and then it goes farther to the planet. Because we need, if you want to have a circular orbit of 320, means we need lot of fuel to reduce the elliptical orbit. We can achieve it with a lesser energy. That is why we go for that. I talked about the aerobraking. With that method, you can reduce it and make a 320 circular orbit so that it will be closer to the planet.
Ma'am, when we are going to have our own space station with the help of from any other agency in the world, our own space station.
Yeah. That's where we are also planning to have our own Bharatiya Antariksh Station, BAS we call it. By first module, we are planning to be inducted by 2031-32 time frame. Then slowly we have to build the station with more and more modules and the cargo.
We have, like you mentioned, that there is exoplanets that we are planning to discover. There are quite a number of already space agencies which have worked on it, like I'm sure CNSA is one of them. So until today, we haven't come across an atmosphere just like that we have on Earth anywhere else in the solar system, outside the solar system, galaxies. I'm just trying to be haven't we been able to till today find out an Earth-like atmosphere anywhere other than planet Earth?
As I know, till today it is not there.
Good evening, ma'am. My name is Samir Nayak, studying in class 4th. So my question was that now as you see SpaceX, they are making reusable rockets. So in the upcoming future, can ISRO even make like this reusable rockets?
Yes, reusable rockets, when you have large number of launches. That time it is reusable, the first stage reusability will be cost effective. But we have very scarce of launches. It may not be really cost effective, but SpaceX, he is doing in 27 hours 3 launches. For him it's very cost effective to have that reusable.
And ma'am, as you said that the Aditya L1 can, if it goes fast, then it'll go to the moon and then it cannot work properly. So till how much time that Aditya L1 will stay in that L1 orbit?
So presently the mission life what we have designed for it based on whatever the available fuel and other systems, we have 5 years life we have designed. But definitely it will live for 10 to 15 years.
Hello ma'am, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. My question is, with significant rise in commercial geospace stations, how is ISRO positioning itself with VES and while balancing the development of indigenous modular space stations and fostering a competitive private space station amidst global commercial space dynamics? I mean, how are we positioning ourselves while there is significant rise in commercial space stations? Now that Axiom space station is coming up with it, and all the Western sites has significant rise with commercial space stations, and there are private companies who are trying to occupy that space. So how are we positioning ourselves in that space?
No, that's what, because of the present, the government's decision is to have, because if you see, now the space economy is it's a significant, because once if you see the space economy was not very significant. Now the space economy has because of that application, and like you see the Starlink applications, and that's huge. It is becoming a business model. It is a business viable business space economy. So if you see that total 10% of the world economy is now the space economy. So the 10% of that, our contribution is not even 2% or very, very minimal. So that's what, because it is now becoming a business and it is becoming a business model. That's how this space reforms have been, government brought in space reforms so that private players can enter into and make it into a business model. So that we are also hand-holding with the private agencies so that they can make system that can be for even for the public. Now it is a global market. So that's what the idea. So the private, now a lot of startups are showing interest and the private players are also coming into play. So we'll see, yes, our goal is to have, so our 2% is becoming 10% in another 10 years. That's the goal to make the market.
Thank you so much. Sorry, the time is limited, so we have to cut short the interaction, but it's been great having you here, and you've answered all the queries, the excitement about the future very well. So we again would like to thank you, and thank the audience also for coming here and spending time with us. So let's have a big hand again. So with that, we will finish our session for tonight, but let us remind you that we have our social media which you can connect with and follow and keep a track of all the events that are there. If there are any questions right now, you can just send over to our email ID. We will pass on to the speaker as well. We can help you, carry on the conversation. Other than that, I would like to make an early announcement of our next public lecture, which will be on the 3rd of December. It will be announced very soon, but it's also going to be a very unique one where it's like a 3-actor play. It's a talk, but it's going to be in a very different format. It's going to be about the very fundamental particles that make up the universe. It's by a professor from Penn State University. So we welcome you all, early advance welcome to the next session, which will be on the 3rd of December. So hope to see you all at that time. Thank you all. Have a great evening.